Hello friends and enemies, welcome to or back to Happy for Now. It's me Isabel here with my romance fantasy TBR. There's a mix here. I did do a mix. I did group them a little bit into more romantasy leaning, what I'm assuming, because I've not read these books. And then obviously the more fantasy leaning ones. These are a variety of titles I've had on my radar, and I was like, let's build a list. Let's build a list. Let's talk about the list. And maybe y'all will take some things off my list or add. Y'all are probably gonna add to my TBR, let's be honest. I know the truth here, and you're gonna drop something in the comments and I'm like, oh, I do need to read that. So yeah, there'll be timestamps down below for each section if you only want one or the other. The romantasy section definitely is heavier than the fantasy leaning section because romance fantasy is more my jam, but I'm always open to other genres. I know I don't read a ton of them necessarily, like enough to seem notable. Believe it or not, before I did booktube, I read a lot of fantasy and sci-fi and stuff like that. Like I was reading Brent Weeks and George R.R. Martin and all these things, and then I found romance and I was like, I want to be over there. Please and thank you. And then my attention span has just gotten worse and worse with the ADHD, so it's fine. Anyways, I'm always open to dabbling back into other genres and trying new things. I have a couple sci-fis on my list that I'd like to read in the next year. I don't know if I'll get to them in 2024 because 2024 has been personally a rough year. If you've been here for a minute, you know that, but a lot of good things still, but just like less high stress. So like sometimes I need the security of a romance currently in my life. But let's dive into these books, shall we? First up, we have Trial of the Sun Queen by Nisha J. Tolley. I actually oh my god, it's right here. I was like, I have this. I got it signed. And I didn't get my name on it because if I don't like it, I'm going to give it to somebody who did like it. But I have The Trial of the Sun Queen by Nisha J. Tolley. I also have ARCs of these. I got this at Steamy Lit Con and she was there, so I got my book signed. But I'm really intrigued by this series personally. I've heard mixed things about book one, but also almost everyone I know that didn't love book one, like 3-starred it, didn't love it, was like, no, but I do actually want to read the sequel. That says a lot to me. So I'm very curious. This is about a girl named Lore who has been like tormented under the Aura King's rule. She's basically thrust into the spotlight and has to compete against 9 other tributes. So it's like Hunger Games, but also selection-y because there's romance elements. She has to win his heart to win her freedom. And I think that sounds really intriguing. Definitely right up my alley kind of romantasy I like. I don't know how slow of a burn this is. I know a lot of these that I'm going to talk about are pretty slow burns, so let me know in the comments. But I'm intrigued. I've heard the first book, like I said, can be not as great, but we'll see. We'll see what I think when I get there. Okay, that's the only one I have physically to hold up for you. Next, we have The Ever King by L.J. Andrews, I believe. This is one I think I got on TikTok and mostly piqued my interest because it seemed like an interesting mix of things that we're getting more of in fantasy now, but for a long time we were not getting in fantasy. So this is like a king who had his crown stolen. He steals their daughter. It's a pirates, sirens, Viking mix. It sounds really interesting to me. But yeah, this to me sounds like an interesting mix, more piratey, Vikings. Like that sounds fun. That's different. I've read book 1 in Omegaverse Vikings book. So I'm thinking to like kind of leap back through to this and try. I'm thinking this might pique my interest. I just think this sounds like an interesting mix, something different. Then I have Quicksilver, which I've read like 10% of. I'm curious about this one. I would like to read the rest of it. I think this is one of those ones that like picked up on TikTok. It's definitely more romance leaning, like not plot heavy. Whereas I tend to like a balance. But I will say this, I cannot get over this hero's name. His name is like Kingfisher. And I know that's like a bird too, but I just think of Pokemon. I'm like, that's a Pokemon. Why is this hero named after him? Can I throw a Pokeball at him and catch him? I'm sorry. I cannot get over his name, but I'm really curious about this one. It does seem overly long for what it is, so we'll see. I definitely want to loop back and finish it up at some point. It just wasn't holding me when I tried to read it. And I also was reading another romance fantasy, and I definitely cannot read 2 of these at the same time at all. Next, we have North is the Night. This is Emily Rath's new Finnish-inspired folklore romantasy. This doesn't come out till December, but it's going on this TBR because fall, winter is romantasy season in my opinion. So this is maybe sapphic. The reviews are mixed on the sapphic romance. I believe one of our heroines is in a relationship with like the god of death. So y'all know that's one of my book nips. Like I love death and / like death-like things as love interests. So I'm like, yes, please, I need this. I will be picking it up when it comes out in December. Next, we have One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This has been on my TBR for a while. My friends loved it. It came off KU, so I hadn't read it. I kept getting it from the library. Again, summer, spring, not my romantasy reading time necessarily. I'm not a seasonal reader, but I am like a seasonal mood reader. And to me, like romantasy fantasy is when like the nights are dark earlier, you know, like you want to cozy up with this book. So this one, I don't know a ton about, besides that a bunch of my friends loved it. I think my mom read it and liked it. If she hasn't read it, it's on her TBR. But multiples of my friends have read and enjoyed this. I know there's like tarot magic. There's like a being inside of her. So I'm fascinated. I am intrigued. This is my members pick for September, so they'll get a reading vlog of me reading this one. I'm really excited about that as well. Next, we have a series that finishes in September. So I'm curious, but I'm like, because listen, it could be really good. Been curious about it, but I kind of need to know how it wraps up. So that is the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy. I've not read anything by Raven Kennedy, I don't believe. This is one that has been on my radar for a while, honestly, since like the first book. But I heard Slow Burn and like Enemies to Lovers, I think. I know at least Slow Burn, and it's 6 books. So I'm very relieved I waited, because I do not love waiting for books. I will do it. Obviously, I do it all the time, but there's a part of me that is like, if I like this, I want to be able to marathon it until I'm like sick of it and then come back to it. So I've waited on this. She is turned to gold by King Midas's touch and lives in this gilded cage, and then I think gets kidnapped or something. I'm not sure. I've truly avoided many spoilers for this one, but I am just absolutely intrigued at the end of the day to see where this goes and if it's any good. Again, I'm nervous because I know the last book is about to come out. So I'm like, if people are like, this paid off and it was good, it stays on. If it didn't, straight off the TBR, just in the trash. We're done. Not even gonna try. Next, we have Spark of the Everflame. This is by Penn Cole. This is another one I've seen around a lot. Another one that is being billed as slow burn enemies to lovers. I just cannot escape it, and I'm curious. Now, I have seen a big split, which almost makes me want to read it. People like really annoyed at the slow burn because like in book 2 or 3 they hadn't kissed, like they kissed once and then like 500 pages later. I don't know which book it was either because all these covers look the same to me. Another problem I have with some romantasies, but anyways, beyond the point. This is one that I keep seeing everywhere, and I'm just like, it's that thing where sometimes when I see a thing a lot, I'm like, I want to know, will I even make it through this book? And to force myself to try and make it through this book, I did indeed get an ARC on NetGalley for the traditional publishing of it, so I guess we'll be reading it sooner than later. I think it comes out traditionally in like October, so I'll probably read it in the next chunk of time. Okay, we're gonna move on from Romantasy books. One thing I want to talk about with Romantasy also, before we move into the fantasy leaning ones, is like, I think I struggle with Romantasy at times because I really like a nice balance between romance and plot when I'm reading this genre. And maybe it's because I came from reading other things like this that had like more romantic subplots, that I kind of want that split. And I think that split's doable, but I think a lot of times we're like sacrificing plot for the sake of tropes in a weird way. And my other problem with Romantasy, I will say, is that I feel like the covers, I cannot tell you what book is what. I have no idea ever. They all look the same to my brain. So there's that. That's very fun. All right, let's talk about the fantasy leaning ones. I only have 3 here because this is the one where I struggled to find stuff that I still wanted to read. So first up, we have Jade Legacy series by Fonda Lee. This has been on my TBR/radar forever. But I don't like picking up incomplete things always. I get nervous. I know we should read incomplete series, but I kept hearing about cliffhangers with book 2, I believe, so I knew I had to wait. So this is a series I've basically only seen good things about. Handful of people that have not liked it, but almost anyone whose taste I tend to align with really enjoyed this series. I know it's like a mafia type world, more urban fantasy, which I do love an urban fantasy. And I know that Jade is some kind of currency power thing, magic ability. One of the guys has his nipples pierced also. I know that. Don't ask why I remember that, but I remember that. I have seen many a Twitter discussion about that one. I knew I wanted to wait till this one was pretty much completed to read it, so I'm really excited to finally pick it up here. This is one that I think I might do a dedicated reading vlog for. Let me know in the comments, and we can talk about that at the end here too. Next, we have Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher. This has been on many a TBRs for me. I don't know a ton about it. I know I like T. Kingfisher's writing so far. I like a lot of what I've read so far from them. And I know a lot of people have loved this series, so I feel like I just need to read it. So we're going to do that. We're going to read it because I need to. And then last but not least is To Shape a Dragon's Breath. This is by, I hope I get this right, Moniquil Blackgoose. The Seekonok Wampanoag tribe of Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Why did I butcher Massachusetts? Like I haven't lived there before. I don't know. Reading it and my brain trying to say it did not work well. Anyways, this is about a young indigenous woman who enters a colonizer-run dragon academy, finds herself at odds with the approved way of doing things. It's queer, it's YA. I have heard this book is fantastic and gives a lot of what people wanted from Fourth Wing, but in a YA queer book with more discussion on colonization and things like that, I'm assuming. I mean, I think it's safe to assume that's there. But I'm really excited by this one. It has been on my TBR forever, and I feel like by the time I put it on my TBR when it came out, I was like, not burned out on dragon books, but I just like wasn't ready to pick up another dragon book. So I'm definitely ready to pick this one up and plan to. Okay, I know it's not fall yet, y'all, but we can pretend for like a hot second that, you know, by early September I will be picking up these books. So anyways, those are my romantasy leaning and fantasy leaning TBR picks for this season. Let me know in the comments what you think I should read of this list, if there's something you really think I should prioritize, or if you have another book rec for me. And then, of course, let me know what's on your romantasy TBR, and do you lean towards the more romantic or fantasy side? Like, all those things. Answer any and all of those questions, please and thank you. Okay, please and thank you. If you don't do any of that, you can just leave me that dragon emoji down there, because dragons. Always dragons, right? I'll have links to all these books for you down below, as well as links to my friend anywhere on the internet, and I will literally talk to y'all in just a few days. Bye!
Already packing, come with me. I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be. Life with no distractions, we'll get away